Charles. We're in studio today, and I am super excited to welcome back one of our favorite guests who hasn't been with us in quite a while, Dr. Jerome Corsi. Dr. Corsi, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm great, and it's good to be back with you guys too. I miss being with you, both Jason and Charles, and you're
Well,
both looking good. You're both looking quite good.
Well,
thanks
thank
for
you.
you.
You too. Looking well,
Thank
Doctor.
you.
It's been an amazing week. I think people have been stunned by this assassination attempt against the former president, Donald Trump. I thought of you immediately, Dr. Corsi, because to me it is just so similar to what happened on November 22nd, 1963, and you have written some of the best books that anybody can get about the JFK assassination, including your newest book, The Final Analysis. And for people who haven't read this book yet, Dr. Corsi, you have gotten into a fascinating application of modern X-ray density technology. Do you want to tell people about this book before we discuss the Donald Trump attempt?
Yes, thank you. This book came out in March, and I've been working on it for a year. Dr. David Mantik, who has a PhD in physics and also an MD, he's been a radiation oncologist. He's been reading X-rays for cancer patients for over 4 decades. He's seen the X-rays, the JFK skull X-rays from the autopsy. There's 3 remaining in the National Archives. He's seen them more than anyone else. And he has taken optical density measurements of the X-rays, which is taken a medical device. It's a scientific apparatus that casts a beam of light into an arm, which then measures how much light is coming through the X-ray, which permits you to know exactly what you're looking at. So, you begin to understand whether it's bone or whether it's empty tissue. Well, the remarkable thing about what Dr. Mantik has demonstrated is that all 3 of the X-rays in the archives of JFK's autopsy, the skull X-rays, are forgeries.
Wow.
And they were masked. They were altered to mask evidence of frontal shots. And yet there are 2 clearly visible frontal shots in the X-rays. And that's where I have these different arrows, what you're showing now on the screen. The first shot that hit Jack Kennedy and came through the windshield and hit him in the throat. And then the first shot that hit his head was the yellow arrow there, or in the cover, it's actually, on the cover of the book, it's a different color. I think it's yellow on the cover of the book too. That's it right there, the yellow arrow. That hit at a low angle by what they call the EOP, the external occipital protuberance, the knob in the back of your head. And it blew out a good portion of the upper right temporal bone up by the forehead, caused that head flap. That was at frame 313 of this Bruder film. And then these next 2 shots happened almost simultaneously. The red arrow, less than 2 seconds after the yellow arrow hit, a shot from the grassy knoll hit on the temporal bone by the ear. You can see it entered, and in the book I show the book's very heavily illustrated. So you can see that that's what they call a knob hole fracture. Well, it kind of punctures a hole and then it fractures. And it blew out the back right of JFK's head, the occipital bone. And in fact, what you can see here is that this white patch by the yellow arrow is brighter than is possible in an X-ray. It's actually by the red arrow, the little bone with the dot in it, that's the petrous bone by the ear. That's the densest bone in the body. So this is a mask that was put so you can't see the full blowout at the back of the head. And then the blue arrow, a shot hit at the forehead by the hairline. And if you enlarge that a little bit, you can see that there's actually a bullet trail.
Wow.
Like you can see going across. It enters in by the forehead. The largest fragment is at the back of the head, and it does not exit. That's a clear frontal shot. And it's been there. That's been in those X-rays from the very beginning. And it's just unmistakable.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing, Dr. Corsi. And just quickly, how many years from the time of the assassination to the publication of this book which has just got unprecedented new research in it. 61 years, right?
61 years. Now, Dr. Bantic has been over years publishing some of this, but he's, given his PhD in physics and his, advanced medical degree in radio oncology, he's been hard to read for the average public. Optical density measurements are logarithms, and most people today are not taught logarithms or don't understand them, but they're very critical to a lot of fundamental scientific measurements of all kind. That's Dr. Bantic. And so what I endeavor to do is to say to Dr. Bantic, look, let's write a book in which we explain you to the general public so the general reader without advanced scientific knowledge can follow what you're saying. And the book is extremely heavily illustrated. There's over 1,000 footnotes in the book.
Wow.
And what you can see is step by step the analysis, because all the scientific information is put in the appendices at the back. And there's quite a bit of technical information in here in terms of how X-rays were made, how they were duplicated, how they could be forged, evidence of forgery, which is unmistakable. But I think one of the things that's most convincing to people is seeing that blue arrow with the trace of the bullets going across the top of the head. That's just unmistakable. Now, that caused the Warren Commission to try to move the headshot up to coincide with that stream of bullets, which they never successfully managed to do. But the fundamental problem is that the largest fragment is at the back of the head. And of course, the bullet breaks up inside a head. The largest fragment is the heaviest. It has the most momentum. It will travel the farthest. And since it does not penetrate the skull, it is clearly a shot that did not enter from the back. So when we see this, what we realize is that, and certainly all the Parkland Hospital doctors who gave descriptions said that they saw the puncture wound at the throat, which is clearly an entrance wound. They saw this blow out of the back of the head, which they describe as, the bullet entered the temporal bone, and most of the right cerebral hemisphere was gone. All the brain in here was gone. The blowout of the back of the head was like the size of a baseball. And they could look down into the cavity, and they could see that the right hemisphere of JFK's head had been completely destroyed. That shot occurs at Zapruder Room film frame 320. So 313 is a shot to the back of the head, get the spray coming out to the front, and then 320, the temporal bone just explodes.
Charles is very uneasy about this kind of stuff, Dr. Corsi. He gets a little bit grossed out.
Keep going.
Well,
it's okay.
The point is that even the Secret Service knew that Kennedy was shot from the front.
Right.
Because Clint Hill, who ran onto the back of the limousine from the Secret Service car, managed to grab a hold of the handrail, the trunk on the left by Jackie Kennedy, get his foot on the running board, and he climbed up. And as the shot hit Jack Kennedy, both the motorcycle officer to the immediate left and Clint Hill, there's Clint Hill, got splattered by JFK's blood and gore and bone. And the motorcycle cop got hit so hard he thought he had been hit. And a piece of the skull, the Harper fragment, actually flew off to the left. Now, Jackie Kennedy comes out of the back of the car, and she reaches on the left of the trunk to pick up a piece of Jack Kennedy's brain, which she puts back into his head. She has him actually sitting up as they're going under the triple underpass. He's dead. But all the action of that third shot came from the grassy knoll, which was violently back into the left. So the back into the left was a separate shot. The shot that there were two shots, one at 313 and then one at 320. And once you see it in the film, it's clear. Once you learn how to see the X-ray, you can see the trace of the bullets across the top of the head. And there's just no doubt, in fact, that Jack Kennedy was shot twice from the front, and the Secret Service knew it. Mm-hmm. And the windshield shot was a puncture shot from the front, because safety glass bevels outward inside, and Jack Kennedy's face was was scarred with all of the glass hitting his face in little fragments. In fact, at Bethesda Naval Hospital, the autopsy, um, the people preparing the body for display back in the White House had a hard time stopping all these little blood uh, drops that were forming from the glass that had shattered and hit Jack Kennedy's face. And at Parkland Hospital, as soon as the limousine got there, Secret Service are taking buckets of water and they're clearing out the brain and blood from the back seat. They're destroying a crime scene. People are recognizing the puncture wound through the windshield. They cordon off the limousine so no one can photograph it, and they get it out of there. Over the weekend, they replace the windshield and destroy the original. So Jack Kennedy was shot from the front, and the Secret Service knew it. Problem was when they took Jack Kennedy's body out at gunpoint from Parkland Hospital because the Earl Rose, who was the pathologist in Dallas, showed up to do the autopsy with the Justice of the Peace, and the Secret Service pulled their weapons and said, "We're taking this body back to Washington." There was no federal crime to shoot the president at that time. It was a local murder. And so they got the body out of there. And then about an hour into the flight from Love Field back to Andrews Air Force Base, Lee Harvey Oswald was picked up. And they said he had done the shooting from the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository. But the problem was that there's the limousine. You see how they did everything they could to conceal the car so you couldn't see the front windshield, and cordoned it off so nobody could get close to it. At any rate, Al Alchins, who was a photographer for the AP, had been standing in front of the limousine when the shooting started. He's the one who took the picture of the shot coming through the windshield, hitting Jack Kennedy with his hands are up to his neck. And in the background, you can see the Texas School Book Depository. So now the federal government's got a problem because the body shows frontal shots unmistakably. The doctors at Parkland actually gave a press conference and said he was shot from the front. But then again, the setup for Oswald, that's probably Oswald in the doorway. You can see Jack, that's the Alchins photograph enlarged. Jack Kennedy's just been hit in the throat. And so all the shooting had to be from behind Jack Kennedy. But yet the body on the way back to Washington shows frontal shots. So as we describe in the book, they actually managed to get Jack Kennedy's body out of the ceremonial casket that was loaded at Love Field. They helicoptered it to Bethesda. It arrived at 6:30 that evening, in night of November 22nd, 1963, at the back of the Bethesda morgue in a gray shipping casket and a body bag. The autopsy was not going to start until 8 o'clock in the gallery, and Doctors Humes and Boswell, the two pathologists, came out into the anteroom of the morgue, and they performed pre-autopsy surgery to remove evidence of frontal shots. And in fact, when the body comes into the morgue for the gallery, two of the FBI agents who were there, guys named Siebert and O'Neill, write in their 302 after action report that Dr. Hume says there was pre-autopsy surgery, because they actually, pre-autopsy surgery, took a surgical saw and they sawed off the parietal bone, and you can see the surgical cuts and squares where they removed that parietal bone, took the top bone off of his head, so they get in and mess around and remove the bullet fragments. So the reason why people are today going to this book, which was just published, is because now this is forensic evidence. There's no doubt that Jack Kennedy was shot from the front, that the government was complicit from the beginning, and the government lied, and that the Secret Service stood down when the motorcade left Love Field that morning to go through the motorcade into Dallas. Secret Service were backed off from running alongside the car. Motorcycles were backed off. The buildings downtown were not secured. There were people on the rooftops and in the windows. When the car turned from Houston Street onto Elm Street to go through the triple underpass, there was no way to turn out of there. And it was a clear kill zone because the buildings from behind had not been secured with that yellow arrow that shot occurred from. The shot that came through the windshield was on the south side of Dealey Plaza, above on the railroad yard. You can see Jackie Kennedy reaching to the left to pick up part of the brain, not to the right. See, Jack Kennedy was back into the left at this point, and so therefore you can see him by her foot there. That's Jack Kennedy's head, slumped back over to the left from the shot that hit him in the grassy knoll. So he had a grassy knoll shooter on the other side, the south side of Dealey Plaza up by the railroad yard, and it had at least one shooter from behind at a low angle. None of the shots that hit Jack Kennedy's head came from the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository. And so therefore, what we have here is a way in which the government conducted a false flag, lied, and covered up the evidence. And so now looking at the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, it's as if the Secret Service created a window of willful negligence where the shooter could come in, be seen on the premises, watched, climb up onto a roof with a ladder, have his gun, and not be disturbed. So in the Secret Service rules of engagement where they're not allowed to shoot until he shot first. That's like, it's
Crazy.
the same thing with Secret Service. They opened up a window for a shot, and it appeared almost intentional. So today, with our technology, with our knowledge of, especially after this book was published, and it's pretty amazing to me that it came out in March and we're now in July, and we've had an incident where this book explains the narrative creation of a cover story to frame Oswald. And as far as I'm concerned, that kid, Crooks, may have well been the patsy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
Just
shooting.
before we get to Crooks,
Yeah.
the viewers know, I believe, that you are acquainted with Donald Trump.
Yes.
And you've known him for decades.
Yes.
Donald Trump was, in theory, going to release the JFK remaining files, but he didn't.
Yes.
Why do you think he didn't?
Well, the story is that Mike Pompeo, who was, I guess, at that time heading the CIA, came over and told him that there was just too much damaging information on methods and means and all the rest. Now, from what I can figure out and from what they released, there's not going to be a document that says we killed Jack Kennedy. There's already a document from 2 years after the assassination, 1967, where the CIA writes an official memorandum saying it's our policy to discredit anyone who disagrees with the Warren Commission by calling them a conspiracy theory. So they had a disinformation policy going to make sure that the cover story stayed in place from the very beginning. But the knowledge I think they're hiding, and some of it has come out in the documents released, is that Oswald appears to have been working with the CIA on assignment on November 22nd, 1963.
Jesus.
And probably thought he had a different assignment, but was certainly set up as the patsy. And if the government has to release that Oswald was working for the CIA and yet set up, it's going to be much more damaging for the CIA to understand that they would kill Oswald, frame him, have him think he was working for the government doing an honorable duty, and that was part of the creation of a patsy.
But help me,
intended to be killed.
help me understand something, Jerry, if you would. I may be silly, but my reckoning is that the CIA is not supposed to operate inside the United States. Is that wrong?
That's correct. That's correct.
So, how many other instances were the CIA operating inside the United States prior to this date and after this date?
Well, I think first of all, what this opens up and has opened up for people is the recognition that on November 22nd, 1963, the deep state just decided to take over. And they were going to do an assassination of a sitting president in the United States when it was far exceeded, completely outside their legislative authority. They didn't care. The CIA wanted to go to war. The military wanted to go to war. Jack Kennedy had prevented war during the Cuban Missile Crisis when he started back-channeling with Khrushchev. We removed our missiles from Turkey and Cuba removed their missiles from Russia removed their missiles from Cuba. And then Kennedy negotiated a test ban treaty. Final analysis actually comes from the American University speech, in which Jack Kennedy said in the final analysis, we all live in this small planet, we all breathe the same air, we all cherish our children, grandchildren, and we're all mortal. Jack Kennedy had decided that he was going to go for peace. And he had signed a memorandum that had directed that we were going to pull out of Vietnam. We were not going to go into Vietnam. And that memorandum was kept secret. Lyndon Johnson reversed that memorandum with the first hours after taking the presidency and made it sound like he was affirming Kennedy's policy. We did not know about Jack Kennedy's memo pulling out of Vietnam until the Pentagon Papers in 1971 revealed it. And so again, the lying and duplicity by the deep state is apparent. What opens up is people say, okay, let's go afterwards. Why did buildings in 9/11, building number 7 that was not hit by an airplane, why did it come down? 1991, we go into invade Iraq after, the George H.W. Bush goes after the invasion of Kuwait to reverse that, punish Saddam Hussein. Well, where were the weapons of mass destruction that Colin Powell said we were going to find? And then got a bad pandemic created out of a flu and a vaccine that doesn't prevent you from getting the disease. And so we see the CIA, we've been living in a State Department, there's Building 7 coming down, and it was not hit by an airplane. Now, again, that looks like a controlled demolition. And, that's, again, the lies. The government stories don't fit together. And that's what's happening again in Butler, Pennsylvania. The government story doesn't fit together.
Yeah.
And so now, with the technology and all the other aspects, photography is a lot different today than it was in 1963. You have experts out there analyzing and saying, the shots that were recorded, just given the sonic booms and the nature and signature of the shots, were more likely from the water tower than they were from crooks. And crooks may have been, and it's almost like they invited the patsy there. They brought a ladder. They were observing him for at least an hour before the event started. They didn't warn Trump. They let him get up there. They let him have a rifle. I mean, it's almost like he was, patsy, welcome here. Supposed sniper who we're going to kill, welcome here. And then the real shooters from the water tower or wherever get away. And who were they?
Right.
Yeah.
So these are why people today, I think, and I think the book, this final analysis, Jack Kennedy said the final analysis, he wanted peace. And what we have here is a deep state that wants perpetual war. They've never been faithful to the United States at the CIA. See, how far back does it go? Well, Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles, the brothers, who, John Foster Dulles became Secretary of State under Eisenhower, and Allen Dulles ran the CIA. Before World War II, they were working with Brown Brothers Harriman, and they were funding Hitler from Wall Street. They loved the idea of a self-appointed elite, Nazis, working with the multinational corporations, could have an oligarch to control the world.
Dr. Corsi, isn't it true that Allen Dulles was pivotal in creating and executing Operation Paperclip and
Yes.
even in integrating Nazis into the CIA?
Yes, he took Galen's entire Gestapo organization in Europe and made it part of the CIA's European mission going after the communists in Germany. That's Galen. He got a full pass. He got paid a lot of money. He was a Nazi Gestapo agent, very brutal. Gestapo were the death camps. And he was recruited by Allen Dulles to go against the communists because of his intelligence operations that he established during World War II when Nazi Germany was also opposing the Soviet Union. And so he had the intelligence, he had the organization, and Dulles just brought him whole into the CIA.
Where was he based?
Based in Europe.
He was in charge of East Germany, wasn't he? The Stasi in East Germany.
He was officially with the CIA, but he interfaced with the Stasi, and he was penetrating the Stasi in order to get information on the Soviet spies. And so that, and the Operation Paperclip was even more extensive because we went after a wide range of German scientists, including Werner von Braun, who had done the V-2 rocket with Jewish slave labor, and the V-1 rocket, and the buzz bombs that were hitting London. And so we made him head of our space program. John Kennedy did, Werner von Braun, a Nazi, and he was one that really architected what became the moon landing. But there he is with Walt Disney, and he was Nazi.
He's friends with Disney. They're both Nazis, in my opinion.
The Nazi strain, the Nazis were National Socialists, and they were the first to have national health care. That was the whole idea that they would have a very small oligarchy, self-appointed. It's like we have the World Economic Forum right now, or the World Health Organization, or the United Nations.
The Democratic Party.
They control the world with all the resources of the world. They don't need people. They basically want the multinational corporations and their machines to run the world. And that has not changed. That formula is a leftist formula because you provide minimum social welfare benefits to keep the people happy until you get them into a massive war and exterminate them.
Now, Dr. Corsi, if we could, I'd like to ask you to bring us up to today, because so much of what you're telling us, if we just transpose Vietnam onto Ukraine,
right,
and Jack Kennedy onto Donald Trump, it seems almost like Mad Libs. This is like a template, isn't it?
That's why I think my book has caught on so much right now, because what I'm doing is not so much explaining 1963 as explaining 2024.
Yeah.
And the deep state has only gotten further in control. You can go back before to the creation of the OSS. The OSS, when it was created, knew that in Southeast Asia, the intelligence agencies were running the drug trades. They've been running the drug trades since the Opium Wars in China in the 1800s. HSBC was created as a money laundering bank for the drug trades. And Chiang Kai-shek's army, which was the Chinese nationalists fighting against Mao, especially after World War II, which we supported, Chiang Kai-shek made his money on drugs. And during during the Vietnam War, era America, the CIA has always been in drugs. They've been in child trafficking. I caught HSBC 2011 money laundering. I had John Cruz, who was a relationship banking and business banking out of Long Island. He brought me thousands of pages where they would take someone who closed a bank account and they would reopen the bank account and that person's name and social security number, and they'd run millions of dollars through the account, then they close the account with a zero balance. So I got the names of these people. I called up one gentleman I remember in particular, and he's about 86 years old in New York City. He was making his money, owned buildings. He was making his money on the rentals. Said, "Sir, this is going to be a very unusual call, but is your social security number?" And I read it to him. He said, "How'd you get that?" I said, "We'll get to that in a minute, but did you run $3 million through your account in HSBC last week?" I said, "I closed that account years ago." I said, "Well, you better give me the name of your attorney because I'm going to show them documents because that account just had $3 million run through your social security number, and I've got the records to prove it. You and your attorney might want to do something about it."
Wow.
Now, I got contacted by the Department of Homeland Security, met with them in 2011 in an unmarked building, downtown Manhattan, no windows. The whole building was Department of Homeland Security. Spent the day with them, handed over all my records. Senate Permanent Investigating Committee contacted me. I gave them all my records. They wrote over a 300-page report. HSBC was money laundering for the drug cartels in Mexico. And of course, CIA, the NSA, and the Treasury were in it because they all monitor every wire transfer virtually in the world, and they knew this was going on. The fact is, you can't be in the drug business without a bank. You can't be driving around a semi full of $100 bills so you can, as the Sinaloa drug cartel, pull up to a taco stand and $100 bills to have your lunch.
A billion tacos, please.
And so the intelligence agencies run the money laundering. That's one of the reasons I think they like Ukraine open. It's the best money laundering source in the world. They run drugs, and they run child trafficking. They're pedophiles. They run the sex slavery traffic worldwide. These are the two big businesses.
So let's talk about Pompeo a little bit. I mean, I know I watched Tucker destroy Pompeo.
Yes.
He does not like Pompeo. How could a man like Pompeo, with his resume, which is pretty impressive, before you get into the CIA and the State Department, how could he present the way he does, yet protect this type of sin from being known by the average American? The average American is a decent person. This is outrageous.
Well, the modus operandi of these, and it's satanic. This is evil. And what they do is that one way or the other, Pompeo gets compromised. So, he visits Epstein's island. Epstein was a CIA agent. Or one of the reasons the Biden family has not been prosecuted for their money laundering in Ukraine is because the CIA says they were on an intelligence operation. The CIA wanted to fund Burisma to compete with Gazprom, and they were happy if the Bidens did it, taking graft, because it's the way you operate in Ukraine. And the CIA liked the money laundering facility that was open, so they don't want that investigated.
Wow. That's again, outrageous. Outrageous.
The compromise is tremendous. The typical, and this goes back to ages. I remember when Jack Kennedy was killed, November 22nd, 1963, the next week the Kennedys had given a story to Life magazine on, I believe it was Billy Saul Estes, who was running a brothel for Lyndon Johnson.
Oh.
They bought a hotel near Washington, D.C., and they were allowing the congressmen and the senators come over and have sex and drug parties.
Wow.
And that story was going to destroy Lyndon Johnson's presidential ambitions. It was going to be published the next week. And of course, the story got canceled as soon as Jack Kennedy was killed. But that was going to ruin Lyndon Johnson's career. Jack Kennedy left the White House telling his secretary, whose name was also Lincoln, he told Mrs. Lincoln that Lyndon Johnson was not going to be on the ticket in 1964. And the Dallas trip was kind of his goodbye. But the point is, many of these people, Washington is again running sex and drug parties for congressmen. They don't realize it, but maybe they do, but they're photographed, they're compromised, or they're paid money under the table, as when they should be lobbyists. But Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, his family's worth huge amounts of money in China. Well, if Mitch McConnell didn't do what China wanted, I can guarantee you that family would have been killed. And so the whole setup is to compromise Mitch McConnell.
Oh, sure.
And so once you've compromised Congress, either through sex or money, it's a lot cheaper than going to war. And so Pompeo, whatever the compromise was, and I can ask the same question of John Roberts.
Right.
These people who will begin to do the bidding of the deep state when it seems to be irrational are frequently blackmailed. That's the modus operandi. And Washington trades on that kind of knowledge. Very dirty place. And once that corruption takes over, we've lost the fundamental principles of limited government, because we've just, again, let the criminal activity take over. And when you think about the amount of fentanyl coming into the country, you think about the horror of, the child trafficking. But it's very, very deep. I mean, there's also, I've gotten close to Archbishop Vigano, who was just excommunicated by Pope Francis. Well, Pope Francis is LGBT, and he's taking the Catholic Church LGBT. Now, the story there is that there was a Archbishop McCarrick, who was the Archbishop of Washington, and he was known to be a rabid homosexual. He was having sex with the seminarians, and also a pedophile was having sex with the altar boys. Now, he got close to, through contacts in the White House, he got close to the Obama people and also to the Biden when he was vice president. Biden is a Catholic, remember, but he's in favor of abortion. He's in favor of same-sex marriage. And McCarrick, as the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., would still give him communion. Now, McCarrick started operating in the White House and then going back and forth and operating with Pope Francis. And what they decided to do was to do an operation on Honduras. So Honduras came along. They created this was in 2014. They created a Alliance for Prosperity. They started funding like half a billion dollars into Honduras. The president of Honduras at that time had just resigned because his son was involved in drug trafficking and the child sex trade. The new president who came in, I believe his name was Hernandez, was also part of the Sinaloa crime family. And so as far as the Vatican was concerned, which put this deal together with McCarrick traveling between the Vatican and the White House, they set up Honduras to have a flood of children leave and come to the United States. They were running cocaine out of Honduras. And so it was basically the Alliance for Prosperity was a drug trafficking Sinaloa cartel operation operated by the CIA and with a strong sex trade in it, with unaccompanied minors showing up at the border who were scheduled for child sex trade. And this was openly known at the time by those on the inside. I've just reported on it. And it shows the corruption of the Vatican, shows the corruption of the United States government. The intelligence agencies are all over this. They know what's going on, and they allow it to happen.
So, Dr. Corsi, I think it's reasonable to presume that this attempt on Donald Trump's life was made because there's a perception that he's dangerous to this established system. He's talking about ending the war in Ukraine. He's, from the beginning in 2016, he wants to do trade with Russia, and Putin has made it clear he wants Russia to become a modern economy and compete with the EU and the United States. I can't imagine, however, Dr. Corsi, that some of these ridiculous left-wing conspiracy theories we've been hearing from the likes of Joy Reid and other various morons, right? They're saying Trump staged this, etc. That can't possibly be correct. But at the same time, it can't be correct that they plan to miss. We're in uncharted territory here in that we can look back to the JFK assassination as a prototype or a template for this. But we don't know what happens when they miss, right? What do you expect to happen now?
Well, the missing was never anticipated. They thought Kennedy was dead. I mean, they were good shots. They had a crossfire. They weren't going to miss close range, and they weren't going to miss this one either. The shot that hit Trump was going to be an oblique shot. It would have killed him instantly, and he just happened to tilt his head at the right angle. So, if there were 15 shots taken, 14 of them would have hit, and that one would have raised his ear had he held his head at that instant in the exact right position, which, with a bullet traveling supersonic speed, there's no way that could be calculated. And it was past a quarter of an inch within his skull. So that's an act of God right there, that he moved his head exactly at the right moment in a twisting movement to look behind him, which is an unnatural movement. And it just turned out to be the right movement.
I thought I saw reporting, and it may be inaccurate, that when Biden spoke to Trump, he allegedly asked Trump, "Why did you think to turn your head to the right?"
Trump said that to Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that a strange question for Biden to ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Biden, I don't think he has a sound mind of any kind at this point. I don't think he's had it for a long time. And I'm not sure what he asked or what he said. But the point is that anyone who knows anything about assassinations knows that shot, he was dead. And I'm sure the last thing any of the people involved in this conspiracy thought is that they would see Donald Trump get up.
Do this.
It's pretty funny, Dr. Corsi. I remember one time many years ago, I was particularly worried about something, and you and I were having a conversation, and I asked you, what do you think Trump is going to do, Dr. Corsi? And you said, you don't know, but what you do know is that every time it looks like Trump is about to lose, he wins. And this was the ultimate example, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even with the losing the presidency in 2020, which we would think would be the end of his career, it was actually the beginning of his real career. So while that should have destroyed him, it didn't. He looks like he was going to lose, and now he's back. He's back stronger than ever, especially after surviving this assassination attempt. But I think one of the things you're realizing here is that the deep state is now being exposed for how evil it is, and people are catching on. Deep state, our national security policy since 1974, Henry Kissinger signed National Security Memorandum 200, which made global depopulation the official United States policy. So we've been committed to global depopulation now since 1974, which means killing people, reducing the population. Too many people, this Malthusian idea.
Now, where did Kissinger come from?
Well, Kissinger was, at that time, he was national security advisor to Nixon, and he formulated...
He's German, I think, is what Charles is getting at.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Kissinger report, and again, this has not been widely known by the public. And, these secret machinations of the internal operations, I've said, the only solution with this agency, all these agencies we've given all this unelected power to, I'd move the entire federal bureaucracy to Death Valley and give them all the solar and wind they want. It's the only way to do them. Because they're not going to be loyal to the United States. They're running their own agenda. They are globalists, which are neo-Marxists, who think at the highest levels that a few of them can become transhuman, mixing with their machines. It's like a Garden of Eden to Satan, saying, we don't need God. You can be perfect. I'll help you be perfect. God doesn't want you to eat this fruit because he doesn't want you to know what he knows.
Right.
And so there, I'll tell you what he knows, and we'll make this place work. He is dysfunctional. He made it not work. I'll make it work. He wants to be in charge. He wants pride and glory, but I don't care about that. I'll help you make it work.
Yeah. Listening to all this, I mean, it's easy to become justifiably outraged over the evil activities, but I'm a numbers guy, and I look at the amount of money we have piled up in debt in this country. And
we can't afford all this killing.
No, it's not just that. This government is so vast, and now we discover that nobody we think is in charge is actually in charge of it. I mean, this is like giving, let's say you have a wife and 400 mistresses, and you give them all Black American Express cards and say, don't worry about, buy whatever you want. That's what we're doing here. And now we're going to let Brat, as she's calling herself, I think it's from the show Brat Loves Judy. It's some ridiculous reality show. Kamala has been called Brat, and she's embracing this idea that she's Brat. We're going to let Brat, do whatever she does. This is insane.
It is insane.
Well, this whole idea that, the we're going to okay. Department of Defense, I think it's 7 or 8 years they've not passed an audit.
Right.
They've lost $1 trillion. They can't account for $1 trillion. They don't know what happened to it.
That's bad.
Well, I mean, you'd think you could find $1 trillion somewhere around. I mean, it's gone. Well, where'd it go? Well, we don't know.
It's unacceptable. Yeah, I mean, when that kind of stuff happens in business, you fire the management team, you fire the accounting team, you fire the lawyers, you replace people.
But see, and I'm sure, Charles, both you and Jason have come to this recognition that the systems we have many times are broken because we want them that way. Yeah. So the voting systems, I'm working now with some of the voter integrity projects, and there's algorithms, code written into the New York State Board of Election voter registration rolls so they can hide and retrieve fake votes, ghost votes or duplicate votes, clones. Well, of the 4 million records, probably 2 million of them are fraudulent. Now, let's look at credit card systems. If you miss a credit card payment, the credit card company is going to contact you.
These are a few days. Yeah, they know right away.
These are validated, airtight. They know whether you're alive. They know where you are. They know what you spent to the penny. They know what you paid to the penny. So my recommendation is that we run the voting systems with the credit card database system. We run the credit cards with the voting system. Nobody will ever have to pay a credit card.
That's a good idea. I like that, Dr. Corsi.
Because they can't find you. You got different credit cards, and they're all under different records and different names, and they can't track it.
Just to go back to your comment about transhumanism, I think Joe Biden might already be our first transhuman president. I don't know if you've noticed a strange robotic nature to his gait, Dr. Corsi, but I recently discovered that Samsung has in testing, you can't purchase this yet, but they've demonstrated it in Korea and other places. This is a gait-assisted robot that contains gyroscopes and motors and all kinds of stuff. It straps around your waist and your legs, and it's intended to help elderly people who have difficulty balancing and walking, and it improves your walking speed and your balance and regulates your gait. I think Joe Biden has been using this or something like it. And additionally, when he called into Kamala Harris's birthday party or whatever the hell he was doing the other day, I detect, Dr. Corsi, that was someone having created a vocal map of Joe Biden through something like 11 Labs artificial intelligence software, where perhaps a Joe Biden impersonator or someone who is good at imitating his mannerisms and the way that he speaks gets a bit of a boost. Imagine if Rich Little had a computer to just put every impersonation over the top. You would never know that you weren't talking to the actual person.
Well, I'm constantly coming up with another show right now, but I want to make a comment.
Sure.
My working hypothesis about Biden is that it's a weekend at Bernie's. He's been dead for a long time.
I agree.
He's really a hologram operated by AI.
We've seen people might laugh at that initial statement because it is so outrageous, but there are a number of videos of Joe Biden that seem to display visual effects artifacts. Like back in my days in motion picture production, there are some Joe Biden videos that have gone to air that I would have told the visual effects artist, take it back, you got a mat choking issue over here, and we got to fix this. But they don't care. They just air it with Joe Biden.
Well, these are the kinds of anomalies that I think, excuse me, I'm recovering from 3 weeks of COVID.
Oh, boy.
And I'm going to tell you, this thing has been weaponized, and it's not what it was. And we're going to have a much more serious illness coming around. And I'm ramping up telemedicine again in preparation. We will have a pandemic, I believe, before the election.
I hope that's not true, but I think you might be correct. Before you go, Dr. Corsi, I want to make sure people know that they can follow you on X. You are there at Corsi Jerome 1. And also you've got a new website, The Truth Central, so people can join you on either of those websites. I'm so pleased to have you back on the show and to speak with you about your expertise in the JFK assassination and get your insights into this attempt on Donald Trump. Charles, anything else you want to ask Dr. Corsi before we wrap up?
Well, I just think, Jerry, it's very fitting that you will be that you're with us today. You got me into this mess with the Clinton Foundation.
We got each other into that mess, I think.
I wish you a speedy recovery and complete recovery from the COVID saga, and I hope you have a great summer and year.
Well, thank you, and I wish you well on your move, and hope to remain in touch with you.
Of course.
Okay.
Have a great
God
day,
bless,
Dr.
guys.
Corsi. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Well, there you go, Charles. Dr. Corsi. Great to see him again. It's been a while.
Does he know he can sign off?
Yes, he's done there.
Good.
And
Take these out.
you can take those out. And Charles, the floor is yours. If you'd like to continue in the First Amendment forum, we could do that. We could wrap up here, whatever you'd like to do.
I think we just stay on here.
What do you think about what Dr. Corsi had to say?
I think I'm reeling from the shock of seeing it so convincingly in black and white, and I don't react well to being lied to. I don't react well at all to that. I mean, it's one thing if I have no skin in the game, I'm not paying for the lies, but I mean, every American who thinks about this should be sickened that we would have such pervasive criminal activity being carried on by our government, financed by, who knows who's going to pay for it, because I don't know how long the dollar is going to remain a viable currency at this level. There needs to be, where I thought, draining the swamp was a high degree of difficulty job. I mean, I question now whether Washington, D.C. can be saved at all. I mean, looking at this, thinking about my business experience, when you get to a problem that's this intractable, one approach is to say, you know what, let's turn Washington, D.C. into history, Disneyland for history buffs. We'll keep all the buildings, we'll charge admission to go look at this and that. You can go sit in a Senate seat if you want for $100. You sit in a congressman's seat for $25 or whatever. But let's reimagine government. Let's decide, as Vivek was saying, as Elon Musk has proven with X, maybe you could if you just didn't have to do, as these assholes in government speak about, a whole of government approach. Fuck all that. What we need to do is pay down our debt. We need to stop these absurd experiments around the world and internally. And if we were going to start from scratch, in Indonesia, I happen to know that they built a new city, a new seat of government from scratch. They took jungle in Borneo. Indonesia is a very big place. But they lit on, actually, the island that houses Brunei, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And they said, you know what, we're just going to start from scratch. We're not going to be hobbled by Jakarta. We're going to create a new capital city. We could do the same thing. And in business, a lot of times what you do when you have an intractable mess and you have all these bureaucrats who insist on doing things in a certain way, you say, well, you can insist on that all day long. You're based, you think, in Omaha, Nebraska. We're going to move the headquarters to Allentown, Pennsylvania. And if you don't want to, we hope you don't want to go. We hope you like the country clubs, you like the schools your kids are in, because we actually don't want you to go to the new headquarters. That's, I think, what we need to do. And in addition to the United States, the second thing we need to do is we need
Charles, look. They already have Joe Biden in Borneo.
The second thing we need to do, and this is another area where Kennedy was dead set against the direction we're now in, public sector unions need to be disbanded. If I were a money guy trying to figure out, the United States needed money, which we didn't have, so look, we are not financing a way forward where the public sector unions can hold up everybody for raises by saying, if you don't give us the raise, you won't have police, you won't have military, you won't have this, you won't have that. Bullshit.
We don't have it anyway.
Well, but the point is, public sector unions in this country, Biden always, or the person pretending to be Biden, always brags about creating good union jobs. Inside America, the sad truth is that it's the public sector that has most of the union workers. The private sector has very few unions left. There's some in auto, in car transport, in automobiles and SUVs, and in some industries. But in the main, the private sector is not unionized. The public sector should not be unionized. And I had an encounter with a driver, very nice young man, who was been red-pilled, and he was a Rikers Island corrections officer.
Whoa!
And he told me how much money he made.
How much?
$103,000 a year in his 20s.
But it seems like you could get killed at any moment of the day.
But still, that's a large sum to be paying.
If he doesn't have any skills or a college degree.
He's not.
But
You know what he is
he's
now?
not like a...
He's a Lyft driver and a day trader. Actually, now
Wow.
It's kind of impressive. But Kennedy was very much against the idea of this public sector union. So we see what happens to people who buck the system.
Well, I mean, that's like when Bill Gates said that Trump could be like Kennedy. I was like, what the hell are you talking about, Bill Gates? Looks like he was righter than we realized. There's so much we could have discussed with Dr. Corsi about the JFK assassination. He really is one of the most knowledgeable people about it. I meant to ask him where he was when the JFK assassination happened. Do you remember? You must have been very young, Charles.
I can tell you exactly where I was. I was at Grace Church School, and I was, whenever we were let out, I would ordinarily, I think I was in, whatever I was.
6?
7. So I was in second or third grade, I forget which. And that's the incident where we were all the kids were let out from school, but my mother was nowhere to be found. I mean, I think she was practicing on the organ at NYU, I think in Vanderbilt Hall there. And so I'm on there. I think I was there with my brother. I may have that wrong. And talking to this girl who was in our class, my class anyway, and we were all feeling protective. There'd just been a tragedy. Who knows what's going to happen next? And I see this bum coming up the street. And I'm thinking, well, I better protect this girl from the bum. And I'm just about to say something when she jumps up and leaps into the bum's arms. It's Willem de Kooning, the famous artist. This was Lisa de Kooning, who tragically took her own life or died young. But she was in my class. So that's where I was.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, did you couldn't really, as a 6-year-old, appreciate the gravity of 7. You couldn't really appreciate the gravity of what was going on, right? I mean, do you remember what you felt about it?
I thought it was, my mother got really mad at me. I thought it was good that we didn't have a president, because that means nobody could boss us around. I was like, this is great. My mother got really mad. How could you say that, Joe? Well, I don't want to be bossed around.
I mean, it's just, that's the thing. You're 6. You don't really understand. 7, sorry. I mean, you're a small child.
Yeah.
Doesn't even really understand the concept of somebody being dead.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But let's also we should talk a little bit about the place we're in now. We joked with Corsi about Kamala Harris. I mean, first of all, I bitterly resent being lectured to about Trump is a threat to our democracy. First of all, the United States is not a democracy. If we follow the Constitution, we're a constitutional republic. So all these people who talk about our democracy, I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Constitutional Law
While they
Professor.
try to kill the guy running against him.
Right. And, jail all his supporters. And
democracy, right?
Yeah, that sounds like a democracy to me. So when I get a lecture from, Barack Obama, who's people explain to me that he's a constitutional law professor. He's never been a professor. I don't know what constitution he thinks he's following, but it's not the American Constitution. And I don't want to hear from him about our democracy. I don't want to hear from the Democrats. I mean, we go back to 2015 and 16. At the time and in the moment, because I started talking on TV and radio in 2008, I had been saying, and I continue to say, what America needs is an actual Lincoln-Douglas debate where the people who want to talk to us about the benefits of communism and socialism and all that kind of stuff, pick your best person, have that person debate now Donald Trump. Let's have a real debate. If you want communism, full-throated communism, you want socialism, you want people not to have private property, go articulate all those beliefs. Bring that fucking spacesuit cowboy, Klaus Schwab, here, and let him get up on a pedestal and in his Star Trek outfit and tell us why we should embrace communism. I think if you had a real debate, the kind that occurred back in years, look at this idiot.
Didn't he die or have a stroke or something?
I don't know about stroke. I think he stands accused of sexual harassment, and he's been kicked out of the World Economic Forum. And so,
excuse me, I have to go have a stroke.
Exactly. It's just the guy. I mean, I need to get an outfit like that. You'd look good in an outfit like that. Maybe yours would be like lime green or something.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, it looks like he could be in the Mars attack. He's suiting up to meet the Martians in Mars attacks. But we really needed in 15. And the Democrats needed in 15. Bernie Sanders, if you think about it, he was the darling of the academic crowd, the darling of the youth crowd. He was articulating and continues to articulate a hard left approach to life, except when it comes to his 3 mansions and his wife who can bankrupt a college and he can lead the high life and fly private and all that kind of stuff. But he wants socialism and the destruction for all of us. Let him and his people get up there and argue that. And if the Democratic Party stands for socialism and communism, okay, advertise it. Stop. And remember that Kamala Harris, her record is to the left of Bernie Sanders, okay? So we had who knows what meathead Mr. Potato Head Joe Biden stands for anymore. But we had somebody who, certainly in the 1920 time frame, was being positioned as a moderate. The second he got elected, he went crazy, hard left. But if that's what we want now in 2024, we want to go full Bolivia, full Chile, full Cuba in this country. Let the people who advocate that stand up and admit what they want for us. And now Donald Trump needs to have, when the Secret Service is now telling Donald Trump you can't have rallies.
Ridiculous.
My attitude would say, you know what? You're not protecting me anymore.
Yeah, we don't need the Secret Service.
No, we're not using you. We're not using you anymore. We do not trust you.
You're fired.
Yeah, we're going to have our own team. We're going to have 2 cordons now. You're going to have Trump 1. You got to get through that, and then maybe 3 cordons. And it's all going to be operated by the Trump campaign. None of you fucking losers are going to get anywhere near me. Because it's crystal clear to me, as a working theory. I don't know the answer. I don't know what really happened. It's crystal clear to me that this exercise in Butler was an exercise to get Trump. And we did a show early on called Get Trumpy. That's what they were trying to do. They thought they had it nailed for some reason.
You really crossed the line, though, don't you think, Charles? I mean, even with the lawsuits and everything, it's like a certain level. You're going to shoot the guy in the head. What a grim future that would have been for each of us, because it means, look, no matter how successful you become, no matter how powerful you become, even if everybody likes you and wants to vote for you, if we don't even know who doesn't like you, you're out.
And then think about the nerve of that Secret Service bitch, because that's what she is.
Stonewalling
Congress. Come to Congress, like, fuck you. I'm not going to tell you whatever I don't want to tell you. I mean, I don't work for you.
Why can't they arrest her on the spot?
They should have humiliated her.
They did that a little bit, but I'm saying, why can't the sergeant of arms say, okay, you're here under oath to answer a question. We're asking you how many shells were found on that roof. And she's like, well, I know, but I'm not going to tell you.
It's outrageous.
It's like, guess what? Handcuffs, take her to jail.
Right, I know. And so we need to go through that kind of process. And now we had, who knows what's going to happen tonight and what kind of theater, Rand Paul.
Theater, Rand Paul.
Is going to happen tonight, where they try to get somebody to operate something to make it seem like the Joe Biden's actually talking to us.
It's a pre-recorded, computer-generated, one of the things that happened in one of these Star Wars shows, Mandalorian, I don't know the storyline either. They're going back in time or he's been cloned or whatever, but they have Mark Hamill, but from 1977. So it's like Luke Skywalker when he's 20 or whatever, but Mark Hamill is like 70. So they have him come in and do it, and then they compare his voice to what it sounded like in 1977 and change his face with graphics. They've had a week to do all this crap with Joe, and he's only talking for 8 minutes.
Right, but we're way now into the zone of that doesn't work anymore. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons it doesn't work for me is Merrick Garland has been on a pity party ever since they made it impossible for him to be a Supreme Court justice. So he thinks he can do whatever he wants. wants. Yeah, here you have Peter Navarro going to jail, Steve Bannon in jail for defying congressional subpoenas. Merrick Garland has defied a valid congressional subpoena to provide the audio tape of the Joe Biden interview. And when was that interview? Do you know when that interview?
Months ago.
Well, exactly when. Because the point is, people in that interview have known since that interview occurred that Joe Biden's mind checked out a long time ago. Right? They have known that since the date of that interview. And ever since the date of that interview, Merrick Garland and the Biden administration and Latrine Jean-Pierre and all these idiots have been perpetrating a fraud of gargantuan proportions on the American and global public.
Wait a minute. What is this talking about?
That's with the biographer. That's something different.
Ah.
That was Wanitzer.
I asked it for Robert Herr stuff. It looks like it was May 16th.
May 6th, that's when they blocked it.
They're blocking it.
The question is, when did the interview
When was
occur?
it conducted? But where's the transcript?
Recorded interview, March 12th.
Okay.
Okay, so since March 12th, now mind you, in March 12th, 2024, there still were Democratic primaries, right? So they were, right? The Democratic primaries, in theory, continued. So the White House, and specifically the Attorney General, have perpetrated a fraud, first on the Democratic Party. You know, Robert Kennedy, for example, was trying to get...
No, wait, look, it says date of interview October 8th. Sorry.
All right, 8th and 9th.
So
So since before the primary season.
Yeah, October 8th.
Okay. Now, when did the raid on Mar-a-Lago occur? That says 2023. When did the raid on Mar-a-Lago occur? That was in...
Honestly, that
2022.
seems tame now, doesn't it? It's like, oh, that wasn't even a big
Yeah,
deal.
2022.
August 8th, 2022.
So this extends, you know, the arc. Obama loves to talk about the arc of history. This is the arc of calumny, you know, which is evil. You know, they arguably rigged 2020 election. You can go further back, and
they rigged 16. They just didn't think Trump was going to win that much, and they were like, "Holy crap! How did we let that happen?"
They may have rigged 12 as well.
I think
they didn't have to rig
for a long time.
They didn't have to rig 2008. But the point is, at the time, this rot and cover-up is so stinkingly deep. At the time they raided Mar-a-Lago, the government knew that Joe Biden had all kinds of classified information at multiple locations that was not safe.
Well, that's why they did it, so that they knew
Right.
if Trump wins, he can't do this. People will just think he's copying us.
The Irish Compromise. Then they've been sitting on the fact since certainly October 8th, 2023, if not earlier. But somebody in Merrick Garland's office had to listen to the actual audio tape. I question whether the transcript is a true,
accurate. Right.
You know, and if you're sitting there and you're asked a question and you stare off into space for 30 minutes, how is that going to be reflected in the transcript? Is it going to say Joe Biden went to Never Never Land again for 30 minutes? We had to bring a little girl and some ice cream into the room to get his attention back. I mean, this is not, it's not okay. It wouldn't be okay if we're only spending $1 billion a year on government. We're spending $10 trillion a year on government. And this is, you know, I refuse to accept this. I just refuse to.
This is crazy, Tim.
Yeah. Crazy.
It really is. I don't know. It's obviously nobody can really know what's going to happen next, but I think that's kind of the biggest question. We don't know. I knew that Dr. Corsi would agree with the thoughts that I was having just because I've spoken to him about the JFK assassination so much and read so many of his books about it. And it just seems so obvious to me, but that's the thing. Nobody knows what happens, the retribution part of it, when you miss.
Right. Well, and we go into this, you know, we have this party going back on the train of the election. This is a party that's been talking to us about the threat Trump poses to democracy. I mean, and Latrine was just on The View yesterday down this track again. Explain to me how Kamala Harris is today the presumptive nominee of the party. How did that happen? What debate did she participate in? You know, what are her views on any topic? She likes school buses. We all going to get a school bus? She has these ridiculous speeches that make no sense of any kind.
They don't take hold. The first coat didn't take, Charles. You're going to paint that again.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's unacceptable.
And then they were saying that the bandage on Trump's ear is a hoax. So what the hell are you talking about? The guy got shot.
Right.
The doctor put that there.
Yeah.
He's wearing a suit. You want him to bleed all over the...
Right.
Who would not have a bandage on the ear to go out in public after a week after getting shot?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people would have recommended postponing the convention until he fully recovers.
I think it was smart to do it the way
absolutely, yeah.
he did it. And then I saw an interview or a portion of an interview with Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk. And Peterson, he asked him, about the election or whatever. Elon Musk says he thinks it's important that the United States have a strong leader and someone who can project strength. And he said that Biden is failing in that. And he said, getting shot in the face and standing up and fist pumping, he said, that's courage.
Yeah.
That's courage in the moment. It was very authentic what Elon Musk is a confusing guy.
Right. But let's think about Harris. I mean, on my, I hate to do this, but on my my Facebook reels, or some of them are hilarious, and somebody put up Kamala Harris's top 5 accomplishments. Number 1, blank. Number 2, blank. Number 3, blank. Number 4, blank. Number 5,
Willie Harris.
Willie Brown.
Willie Brown, right.
Yeah.
But that's all she's really
No, but
doing.
seriously, what has she done? As a prosecutor, she was reprimanded. I think as a prosecutor, whatever, she was reprimanded for inserting knowingly false testimony into a case that could have resulted in the conviction of somebody. And Peter Schweitzer has been over her record in depth. This is somebody who should not have a bar license, not be, certainly not hold a position of trust, has not been subjected to any type of competition in this new selection process. I mean, for Christ's sake, this person in 19 dropped out before the Iowa caucus because she was repudiated by she's had turnover in her vice presidential staff of over 90%.
And they said particularly black employees hate her.
Right. So she'll show up. Apparently, the rub on her, she doesn't do her homework. She refuses to read her briefings, and then she just engages in repartee.
And she's not even that witty or funny.
She's not funny at all. And so, I mean, this is... See, she too often abused her office.
I just think that's happening more often than it isn't. Like, I don't think you're finding prosecutors who aren't hiding evidence and lying in pleadings. I mean, it's happening all over the place. Every single case I'm in, the professional lawyers that I'm opposed by, I've been stunned by that. Just as a person, their lack of ethics. I'm not just talking about Stephen Biss. I'm talking about all these assholes.
Right. Well, but she's got a bad case of Fannie Willis disease, I think.
What's happening with Fannie Willis? She's just blown out of the water.
As it were.
She's like, Charles, you got to keep a few grand. You wouldn't understand. It's a black thing.
No, but seriously.
It's like, Fannie, you're going to jail. You don't understand.
Yeah. So with Harris, I mean, at this stage, I know the betting odds are saying she's going to be the nominee. At this stage, I question that. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, Netanyahu is speaking, for example,
There's
in
going to
D.C.
be a riot.
Momentarily, and I think at the Democratic National Convention, the situation in the Middle East is still going to be unsettled, to put it mildly. How is the actual convention going to transpire there in Chicago? Is it going to be violence-free? Are there going to be more violent episodes in this thing? And at the end of it, will, in fact, Harris be the nominee? I wonder.
Who do you think it would be if not her?
Well, I think Hillary is just, she's not going to be around, I don't think, to run in 2028. So, I mean, this is her literal last gasp, and I'm sure she could be drafted if people really needed to get somebody like that.
She endorsed Kamala, I think.
Of course, you do that knowing that the next scandal is going to drop, and then people say, well, what do we do?
Yeah,
who is the last woman standing?
Kamala Harris slipped on a banana peel and shot herself in the head 3 times.
Going upstairs.
At the Clintons' house.
Right, exactly.
It's weird. And she's hanging from a tree. I don't know how that happened.
And she likes to cook, right? Remember she went to
She
Paris
bought
to
that
buy a
expensive
pot?
right? Yeah. We cannot have this person be the president. She's just, I mean,
She puts the mo and more on. I mean,
what a cheapening of our integrity, the entire nation. I mean, every single, I didn't even have the picture up. It's just so disgusting to think about a loser like this, lying, cheating, stealing her way to the top.
And can you imagine who she's going to put?
She's not going to the Netanyahu speech.
No, I know. I mean, think about that. Here we have one of our most important allies. There's a story yesterday about a male, I think Israeli, was raped in the October 7th thing, and he's recounting what happened to him. That story came out yesterday. It's a horrific saga back to October 7th. And here we have an ally trying to root out the evil, the source of the evil there. And the leader of the country is coming to Washington, D.C. The president won't meet with him. The vice president won't meet with him. The vice president won't carry out her ceremonial duty, which is to preside at the Senate. And what are you to think as Netanyahu and as an Israeli of the state of relations between the United States and Israel under this Democratic president? What's going to happen if she does win?
This is like if you show up for a date and the girl has already had 6 drinks and she's passing out at the table. It's like, whoa, what?
Well, and sex with 5 other men.
Right. It's this is a non-starter. I might as well just get back on the plane to Tel Aviv.
Right, exactly. It's ridiculous. And that's before we get through the spectacle of 8 o'clock tonight.
I can't wait to see. Oh, yeah, let me show you this. This is pretty interesting. So I am convinced that we're not going to see the real Joe Biden tonight. And I say that, I don't want to impugn this guy because I know him and he's an incredibly talented and nice guy. But this is, I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but I was friends with, and if I saw him, and probably still would be, this guy named Paul Debevic. There he is. He's a visual effects pioneer, really in the visual effects world. This guy's a living legend. And what we have right here is Barack Obama sitting inside, I forget what he calls this thing, 3D portrait. I forget what he calls this machine, but he's at this Center for Creative Technology at USC, excuse me, not UCLA.
And what year is this?
This was probably 2012, 2015. Yeah, this happened just after I left LA. But what happens is all these different lights have different properties, polarized light, and all kinds of different things. And what they do is they're taking a map of Obama's face under all kinds of different lighting conditions and get the texture of his skin and all that. And they can use this. This is not a photo. This is going to make a 3D model of Barack Obama. So if you had this, and guess what? They know Paul Debevic, so they could do this. You put Dumb Joe in this machine, you get him talking, his voice, or you get anybody to talk. The way I would do it is I would do a casting session for who's the best comedian that has Joe Biden's speech patterns and the nuances of the different thing, the thing. Whatever Joe Biden says, get some actor who can do that, get him speak into a voice processing system powered by 11 Labs or some similar kind of AI voice. It's not voice sampling, it's speaker sampling. That's what they call it. You're sampling the speaker, not the particular voice. But you could put together something for television in a week that I really think experts might have a difficult time telling was not Joe Biden.
Wow. Well, a lot going on, Jason.
Makes your teeth look good, that machine, Charles. He's got the
it
super
does.
whitest teeth right ever on Barack Obama.
That's right.
You could possibly imagine. Well, anyway, I feel like perhaps we're done. I get that sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell by certainty. See, we know each other well, Charles. So thank you for arranging that with Dr. Corsi. It was very good to see him again. And thanks to everybody who's watching. We're going to have another show tonight with John Cullen, I believe. And thanks to everybody who's been joining me on X. If you have not done that already, you can get onto x.com and follow me at JG_CSTT. There's been a lot of stuff going on X. People are really interested in knowing. Oh, we should talk about this, Charles. So this guy, this is Keenan, I believe. This is Keenan Hooper. And Keenan Hooper, I've done this little inset here with the Pittsburgh, whatever this is, WABC, News. But Keenan Hooper was arrested with Max Urich in around 2016 or 17. And those guys went to the Allegheny jail. And I just find myself wondering if somebody like Andrew Weissman, not himself, but someone like him, flash forward to 1998 to whoever is doing his job today, did somebody like that go into the jail with an agreement similar to the one that was handed to Felix Sater? And did these two idiots become some kind of FBI, CIA undercover operator? Because this guy on the left, he looks very much like a Keenan, this dude right here. How am I forgetting his last name? I've been saying it a million times. Hooper, right. Hooper. And the thing that I say looks like him is, first of all, look at how his beard comes across to the cheekbone here. Not everybody's beard grows like that. Additionally, it goes down his neck. And this is a controversy among gentlemen who wear beards. I was aware of this when I had a beard, where some people think you're gay if your beard can't grow all the way down to your neck. Well, it's like a lumberjack kind of thing. I don't know. It's itchy. Yeah. But the fact is, not everyone can grow a beard that far down their neck. And this guy in the mugshot seems to have that. Granted, the facial part of the beard is much bushier here, but he's also in a later picture than this mugshot. His hair is going kind of like mine. When he's 50, he's going to have a bit of a widow's peak going there, and you see it more in the photo on the left. This is Keenan Hooper, in my opinion. And he's there with his accomplice, Max Urich. He's been arrested, but they haven't announced that in the mainstream news. And what do you think about this? Is like Secret Service agent Dirty Sanchez right here. What's going on with that?
I don't know.
Very weird, right?
Well, presumably the head of the Secret Service would have known about this arrest.
You would think. She didn't say anything about it in Congress, which was a little bit on the weird side, although not really. There was another congressional hearing yesterday with the Homeland Security Committee, and they had maybe like the commissioner of the Pennsylvania State Police, two guys that were a lot more responsive to the answers and a lot more professional, and they were there doing what you were supposed to do. They're asking them questions, they were answering. But the problem is, most of the questions, the answers were, we don't know. We weren't in control of that. We're waiting for this whatever report from the Secret Service. Charles, don't you think in this circumstance, particularly given, if they weren't guilty, particularly given the horrible optics, wouldn't the right thing to do be for that Cheadle woman to say, here is our preliminary report, right, and now I'm resigning?
Well, I mean, I go back, and you're the expert on this. The Pollock shooting. What was the name? Not Pollock. Pollard. Or the guy out. Paddock shooting out there in Las Vegas. They would have press conferences
every day.
How many press conferences have there been?
Zero.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Just on the face of it, why no press conference? Why also no call to ban guns, which is,
No, they've been saying that in Congress, absolutely. They've repositioned this as a mass shooting. This wasn't an assassination attempt. This was a mass shooting with an AR-15, and this is why we need to stop AR-15s. And that Benny, what's his name?
Thompson.
Arguing for,
he's an idiot.
Because they're bringing up, they're saying he's got to strike this bill right here and now because he was trying to get this Secret Service away from Trump so he would be shot. Truth is, you're right. If that bill had come through and they didn't have the Trump wouldn't just go there and stand out in the field. He'd hire private security, and they probably would be much better because they don't want Trump to get killed because then they're not getting paid anymore.
Right, yeah.
That's the incentive that we need.
Right. Yeah, it's just disgusting.
It is
worse than incompetence. It's malevolence.
Absolutely. That's the thing that they're trying to argue now is incompetence. I'm not letting them off with that. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Charles, we have over 1,000 live viewers today. back to the old viewership numbers, so it's good. We're expanding across platforms. I hope that people watching right now will become sponsors. Help me keep Crowdsource the Truth going. And also, if you go to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, even if you subscribe for free, that's the largest repository of legacy Crowdsource the Truth content on the internet. Lots of interviews with Dr. Corsi, and of course all the stuff I'm doing with Charles and everybody. That you're going to get for free, but you can sponsor the show for as little as $3 a month. You can also get on to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. The truth. The truth. Okay, it's a lot of talking. Thanks for watching, everybody.